Good Saturday morning to you. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Morning Buzz with the Energy Guy. I'm the Energy Guy, Tom Moore. I work for Farmers Electric, and we have this weekly podcast, 30-minute podcast, give or take, every Saturday. The show drops at 7 a.m. every Saturday on several podcast platforms, including Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. For now, we plan on increasing that as our listeners increase, and so be looking for that. So we've been doing some shout outs over the last several weeks, mainly the Barleben clan out of Ladsden, South Carolina. It's the family of Glenn Barleben, our IT manager, and he's actually the one that did the very cool drum set intro, and he also does the outro on the show, so he's a very talented guy. He's our IT manager. And so we've said shout outs to Steve, his dad, Karen, his mother, Ryan, his brother, and we're going to do two more, and then we'll be done. I think we've covered the entire Barleben clan. And so the very last will be Dana. Shout out to you, Dana. She is the wife of Ryan, or Glenn's sister-in-law. And one last one, BB, the Barleben's dog, Steve and Karen's dog. So that should cover it all, unless they've got some extended family or some more pets that may be willing to listen to. So, yeah. Shout out to you guys. All right. Just to recap, this first four shows in just a nutshell. We started talking about where your energy dollar is spent every month. People wonder that, we get those calls all the time. How on earth is my electric bill so high? And we kind of break that down for them and walk them through some things and remind them of some things, and particularly peak times of the year, like right now, for instance, air conditioning is high. It's operating quite often. In the wintertime, it's the heater. Somewhere in between is what we call like a baseline. If you think of a bell curve, it'd be the shoulder months, the lower, and then the higher on the bell curve, the top of the peak is the top of the head, or the top of the bell on a bell curve. And like at its apex, and we're at the apex right now of the summer peak. It's like the warmest part of the summer here in the next couple of weeks. So, you're running your air conditioners a lot, right now? But what we talked about was we've got this pie graph, and it shows that heating and air conditioning use 50% on average of your electric bill. Right now, it's using more than that. It's probably 70% of your electric bill, particularly if you have central AC or window units, refrigerated window units, and we'll talk about those different types of cooling here in just a minute. The second piece of that pipe was water heating, which uses about 11% of your monthly electricity. The next one on the chart was lighting. And if you want to go back and listen to these episodes, that'd be great, because we kind of break things down for you. This I didn't have a lot of time in the first couple episodes to break down the air conditioning, so I'm going to take a little more time today and talk about different options in air conditioning, and what we'll do a little math during this show. I know that's kind of boring, but you can perhaps better understand your electric bill if we break it down this way. And whether or not you're a Farmers Electric member or not, this bill's the same way regardless of what utility you're on. What you could be on Southern California Edison, you could be on PNM, Public Service Company of New Mexico, what used to be Public Service Company of New Mexico, El Paso Electric, XL Energy, so many of them, all the co-ops. We all bill very similarly. Now, our rates might be different, our per hour usage or per kilowatt hour usage. That is always different. They're similar, but always different. Sometimes there's a demand component Like how much are you demanding of the system at any one given time over like a 15-minute increment? Some normally large power is billed that way, but excuse me, some of the co-ops and investor-owned utilities have gone to a three-part rate for residentials, which would include your service charge, and that's another area where utilities may differ. So just the fact that you have service, like for Farmers Electric, is $27.50 per meter. The fact that you have a meter there, there's going to be a cost associated with that, whether you use electricity or not. And then every investor-owned utility or cooperative or municipal system are different. So let's break down a little bit how we can try to stay cool this summer yet save a little money. So we got to figure out what we're spending first. Central AC is common in this part of the country. We're in the high plains of eastern New Mexico, so we have we've got a semi-arid climate. Right now you would think otherwise because we've had a lot of rain. We are technically in a desert, I believe. But we've had a lot of rain, and it's been nice because it's been spread out and we're not getting it all at once, which is nice. And I don't know where we're at. I would say we're probably very close to our average rainfall. Here we are only in July, and we still have a couple of wet months ahead of us through the end of July. August and September is a pretty wet month. I think on average, the greater Clovis area or eastern New Mexico average about 3.5 inches of rain in September, give or take, historically. But central AC is still very effective. It can be expensive, and let me just do a little math for you. So, a typical condensing unit and air handler will use 5,000 watts. Thereabouts. That's ballpark. Now, I'm working with averages here because we can't talk about every different scenario, but let's talk average. 5,000 watts. So that's a big number, right? 5 with 3 zeros. So let's shorten that number just to make the math a little easier. We're going to divide that by 1,000. And that's where you get the kilo in kilowatt. It's 1,000 watts kilowatt, right? 1,000 watts. So 5,000 watts equals 5 kW or 5 kilowatts. And that's how we figure your bill. We use kilowatts. But we have to throw in the time component, right? How long did you have it on? How long was it running? Okay. On 5 kW, if it ran 10 hours a day, that's 50 kilowatt hours per day, right? Times 30, that's 1,500 kilowatt hours. And I say 30 because, and who knows how long you're going to have your air conditioner on, but I'm going to pull out my calculator real quick because this is one I didn't do. So 1,500 kilowatt hours times 11 cents, that's our rate. That's generally the rate. That's $165 a month. 10 hours a day, 5 kW. So it adds up. It adds up. So that's why here at the Farmers Electric studio, the energy guy suggests setting that thermostat at 78 degrees. I didn't just pull that number out of the air, folks. And I have mine set at home at 78 degrees because I have to field a number of questions during the summer about why is my bill so high? And I don't call them complaints. A lot of people do, but I believe it's probably more out of concern than anything. It's like, They just don't understand. Like, how can my bill use this? How can my bill be so high? But that's just 10 hours a day out of 24 hours, folks. And that adds up to 165. So obviously, the higher you have your thermostat, the less your air conditioner is going to work. So the less time. Let's cut that. Let's cut that run time by 2 or 3 hours a day. Don't you think that might be helpful? Yes, you may be a little more uncomfortable, but in the long run, your options are this: a little discomfort or a high bill. It really just boils down to that. It's your choice. I believe you can acclimate. My wife has, to 78 degrees in the summer. Now, it's a little more difficult when the temperatures are where they've been this summer. They haven't been that high. They're going to get higher. If it's 100 degrees, 78 degrees, if it's 100 outside, 78 degrees feels pretty good inside. But if it's 80 degrees outside, 78 doesn't feel so comfortable, does it? That's when you really need to rely on some of the fans and moving air, like ceiling fans creating a comfortable downdraft, or a box fan creating a draft that you can feel. So that's why I say utilize those things, because they don't use much power. Let's move on. Window unit refrigerated air. They use. This is I don't know if this is an average or not, but I looked one up and looked at specs, and it's 1,500 watts or 1.5 kW. Some of them use as low as 500 watts. I did see a few units that used 500 watts or 0.5 kW. Remember, you're taking the watts and dividing by 1,000 to get kilowatts. And those units typically will cool 1 or 2 rooms. That 500 watt unit probably only cools 1 room effectively. And usage can add up. The more units you have running, the higher your consumptions will be, the higher your electric bill is going to be. For example, let's just do a little math here. And this is one I actually did before the show. If you have 4 running at the same time, we're talking refrigerated air units that go in the window, and they are the 1.5 kW or 1,500 watts each. And that would be a total of 6,000 watts or 6 kW. Because you got 4 times 1.5 kW, and that totals, or 1,500 watts times 4, that totals 6,000 watts or 6 kW. So if you got 4 running at the same time for 10 hours a day, the math would look like this: 6 kW times 10 hours equals 60 kWh. H is the hour, the time component, times 30 days in a month equals 1,800 kWh. And remember, that's the billing factor, kWh. 1,800 times 11 cents per kWh is $198. And that's just for AC. Is that realistic? I don't know. I've seen it. I've seen 5 units on a 2,000 square foot house, and they tell me, frankly, they're not comfortable. But you can only imagine 5 units. That's going to push it over $200 a month, just the AC. Let's try something different using the window units. Let's say we're only using 2 of those units at 10 hours a day. So they're 1,500 watts or 1.5 kW times 2 of them. That's 3 kW. Times 10 equals 10 hours a day equals 30 kWh a day. Times 30 days in a month equals 900 kWh. And that's our billing factor. Times 900 times 11 cents per kWh equals $99. And that's just for 2 window units, refrigerated. Definitely not the most efficient. I mean, if you have a man cave or something like that, it's separate, say it's, you converted your garage into that, and you're only going to run that air conditioner when you're out there, it's not going to be that bad. 1-2 hours every other day, or I'm not sure how long people stay in man caves. I try to avoid mine because it usually means work. But, I mean, there are ways to utilize window units, refrigerated window units, and still not, bear a heavy burden of a high electric bill. Another form of air conditioning that, I grew up on, frankly, a lot of us did in this part of the country, evaporative coolers. What else do we call those? Swamp coolers. You're all familiar with swamp coolers, right? Yeah, swamp coolers. As a kid, I used to like that smell of the moisture, going through the pads. And I'd just sit in front of course, that was the most comfortable place in our house. We had one swamp cooler we had about 1,000 square foot house, raised 5 boys in that house. Talk about having to acclimate to different things. Dinner time got real interesting, 5 boys. My poor mother, bless her heart, she would cook all the time. And she never sat down until all us boys and my father were fed. And in hindsight, I think, why didn't I insist that she sit down? I never did. Too busy fighting over the food with my brothers. But bless her heart, sure do miss her. Evaporative or swamp coolers use anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500. Can cool anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 square feet. And those usually run around 500 to 700 watts, or 0.5 kW or 0.7 kW. Again, take your wattage, your total wattage, divide by 1,000, that give you kW. Let's just go right in the middle there. 0.6 kW, so 600 watts, if you found one for 600 watts, at 10 hours a day. So it's 0.6 times 10, that's 30 kWh. That's our billing factor again. Times 30. Is it right? Yeah, 30 a day times 30 is 180 kilowatt hours. And you multiply that times 11 cents. And that's, let's go back. Let's go back on that. I made a mistake. 0.6 times 10 hours a day. Got to get my calculator out of here again. 0.6 times 10 is 6 kilowatt hours a day, right? Times 30 is 180 kilowatt hours a month. Okay, I was saying all those numbers, I was just getting them out of order. 180 kilowatt hours a month times 11 cents, which is our rate, equals $19.80 a month. You're thinking, wow, that's cheap. It is. That's why so many families, particularly back in the day, used evaporative cooling. There are some downsides to evaporative cooling, one of which is humidity. And I don't know about you guys, but I can feel the humidity a little more now than I did when I was growing up. And maybe I'm more temperamental. I don't know. But kid, you kind of roll with the punches. And you spent so many hours outside, you really, when you came inside, if it was slightly cooler, you felt good. Or like me, wanting to smell that moist air coming out of the evaporative cooler, the swamp cooler, you'd put your face right in it. But man, that's a huge difference. But again, I don't know if it's an artificial humidity we're experiencing here with all the irrigation sprinklers going. I don't know if it's creating a humidity dome or what, but they don't seem to work as well. In my parents' last several years, they had moved, so they were in a little larger house, but not much. It's like 1,300 square feet, but they were still using the evaporative cooler, and it wasn't working. And my parents were getting older, and they were feeling it. And the boys were like, "Hey, we need to do something different." So we just went together, the boys, and gifted our parents with a central AC unit. And boy, you'd have thought that was the second only to sliced bread to my parents. They were so thankful. And we put a dishwasher in that same house. So up until that point, all us boys were the dishwasher. But yeah. Were they always so comfortable? You know, it was difficult sleeping sometimes. I remember as a kid, it was so warm in our house. You know, if you had the evaporative cooler kind of in a living room window, it sometimes took a while for that cooler air to come to the back. So we would draw that, you know, by opening a window on the opposite side of the house and kind of pull it through, and that helped. But man, the refrigerated air sure made a difference for my parents anyway, so they were thankful for that. Another that little more popular air conditioning that we've seen, and it's air conditioning and heating, that's their heat pumps, but they're called mini split heat pumps. You've probably heard of them, mini splits. We got a lot of folks that are putting those in around eastern New Mexico, and they seem to work well. I have a small little rental, and I put mini splits in that, and a lot of them are DIY. I had somebody put mine in just because I didn't have enough time, but it wasn't outrageous for them to install that. And that was, can't remember who put that in for me right now. I'll think of it here in a minute. But there are some advantages to those. First of all, no duct work. Okay, they have headers in each of the rooms you want to try to cool, or each large area of the home you want to cool. So you can have anywhere from one header to maybe 5 headers per condensing unit, outside unit. If you want any more than that, if it's bigger than that, I would probably suggest central heating and air conditioning with ductwork, but I think I've seen homes that have 2 outdoor units and then might have 3 headers coming off one, 2 off the other, so 5 total headers. They are efficient. The initial install cost is not bad. And one other thing that's really cool about them is zone control. So if you don't have somebody in a room that has a header, you can turn that. They're all thermostatically controlled. Each one of them are separate, and you can turn that zone off, and it doesn't affect the ability for the others to cool. I have one issue with mine. If it's really hot outside, and I got 2 headers for one outdoor unit, and that outdoor unit is a 2-ton unit. It's 24,000 BTUs, and a unit is 12,000 BTUs. I mean, 1 ton, is 1 ton is 12,000 BTUs, so it's 24,000 BTUs or 2-ton unit. A lot of you listeners may have a 4-ton unit, and that's 48,000 BTUs, or a 5-ton unit, 60,000 BTUs. But this one's 24,000 BTUs or 2-ton unit. And in the very hot days, if it's been running a lot, it tends to freeze up on the header. And there's a workaround. You got to turn the heater on for just a few seconds, just I say seconds, 2 or 3 minutes, and it will melt that. So you got to, unfortunately, those headers are inside, and the water will run down the wall. So you got to be prepared for that. It doesn't happen often. It's probably happened twice in 3 years since my install on those. But they use, they're pretty efficient. They use about 2.5 kW per outside condensing unit. So you can do the math. Since I've told you how to do the math, now you can do the math. And we can talk about the math next time. But in the meantime, we're 26 minutes into this show, and I got a little mail. And it's I call it Ask the Energy Guy, and I'll just read it to you since they sent it to me through a message on our Facebook page, Morning Buzz with the Energy Guy. You can look us up, like us, and follow us. But it goes like this: Hey, Energy Guy, a friend of mine says I shouldn't put my old fridge in the garage to keep cold drinks in. He says it will cost me money. I'm replacing it with a new energy efficient model. What do you think? And first of all, that's a great question. It's one that I talked about when we had the radio station, and I'll talk about it again. But if you buy a new refrigerator and put the old one out in the garage to handle your overload, you're going to pay dearly, because why are you replacing the refrigerator in the first place? Probably because it's inefficient. It's old. Or is it for aesthetics? Could be for aesthetics. It could be an emotional decision. I don't like the color. It doesn't match our other appliances. That's what I call emotional decisions. But if it's worn out and it's on its last leg, that's the last thing you want to put in a hot garage, right? Older refrigerator and freezers use up to twice the energy of new energy efficient models, especially if the new ones carry the Energy Star label, and most of them do. In fact, it could cost you up to $175 a year on your electric bill to run that old Energy Hog. Plus, using a refrigerator in the garage is even more inefficient. When it's hot outside, it gets really hot in the garage, right? That's probably the second hottest place in a house during the middle of the summer. The first, my living room. No, not really. The first is the attic. I mean, it can get 120 degrees easy in the attic. And the garage is second only to that. But that means your refrigerator has to work overtime to keep things cool inside. Remember, refrigerators work with return air. And if that air is hot, it's going to cause your refrigerator to work harder and longer. There's a solution. Have your old refrigerator hauled away to a place that recycles older models. Buying a new small unit to handle your overflow will be worth it, as it saves money on your electric bill over its lifetime. We've got a couple of those here at the office at Farmers Electric. They are, we've got one in our boardroom, because we want to keep water cold in there. We don't, and maybe a few soft drinks. We didn't move our old refrigerator we have in our kitchen back in our meeting room. We didn't move it out to the shop and put a new one in the meeting room. No, when it was time, we replaced it. And that, when I say when it was time, I think we used that refrigerator for 25 years before we replaced it. We tried to get our money's worth here. And then in just the last few years, we put one of those little mini fridge units in the boardroom, and it works off return air. So the air is pretty cool in there, say 72, and it doesn't work very hard. But keep those questions coming. I mean, I hope that helped. I understand, the guys might want to have their favorite cold beverage out in the garage because they maybe that's part of their, maybe that's their man cave before it comes formally remodeled. But and they got a friend over and they want to talk sports or whatever. But again, it's the most inefficient place to have a refrigerator is in the garage. But if you have a question for me, the Energy Guy, just message me on our Facebook page, Morning Buzz with the Energy Guys. And by the way, who needs coffee when you got Morning Buzz with the Energy Guys? Thanks for tuning in.